Hey guys, it's Elena. Today I wanted to do a Zentangle variation with my new pattern reveal brush set. And the idea is really simple. We're just going to lay down a big map pattern and then we're going to fill each of the sections with a different pattern. It ends up really chaotic and colorful, and mine kind of took on a whole Easter spring vibe without even meaning to, but I just kind of went with it. So you're very welcome to just follow along with the brushes if you have them, or otherwise you can just draw your own pattern and then doodle your patterns in instead, and just take whatever inspiration you can from this and make your own Zentangle variation. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's make a new canvas that is, let's just go with screen size. And the color palette that I will be using for this project is called Pure Dopamine, and this comes with the pattern reveal brush set. And I will also be using the pattern reveal brushes and no other brushes, just this one. So to start out with, I wanted to make some map lines across the screen so that I can then select different areas of the page and fill it with a different pattern. So let me just show you what I mean. Down here at the bottom, we've got the organic section, and there's a brush called Map Lines. So we're going to go with that one. And let's just select a light yellow. And I think we're at about 40% on this brush. And I'm just going to cover the whole page like that. This is pretty large, and that's what I want because I want to be able to select these different white areas and fill each one with a different pattern or color. Let's just rename this layer Map Patterns. So this is going to be our template. We're going to keep coming back to this and selecting different areas of white. You don't have to use the map lines for this. You could also use the Scribblicious or even the stripes, or you could also just hand draw any pattern that you want. This is just the one that I chose. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to keep coming back to this layer here, and then we're going to select different white areas, and then we're going to add patterns to them. So let's go to the ribbon tool, and we want it to be on automatic, and then we're going to pick any white space here. So I'm just going to start with this one, and you can see that it's selected because it turned blue. So now if we go to our layers, you can see the blue disappeared, but we still have our active selection because we've got these dancing stripes, and the selected part is not covered with those stripes. So let's add a layer here. And so what we can do is we can tap that new layer and tap mask. And then this layer mask appears. And this means that whatever goes into this layer, the only part of it that will show is what is white here. We're going to make sure that we're in the layer, not the layer mask. And then we're just going to go and select a pattern that we want to put there. So I wanted to go with the one called Layered Flower. And I really want this to be kind of bright and like colorful. Let's go with kind of a dark pink here. Let's just make it a bit smaller, maybe about 6%. Yeah, and I'm using a lot of pressure so that the whole pattern is appearing. And let's maybe just add one more color to that. Let's maybe go with orange. And we haven't really changed anything except for the color, so we can go back to the pattern and just add this orange to a few different places. And there's not a lot of difference, to be honest. So I'm thinking about using a slightly different color as well, something that stands out a bit more. Maybe let's go with blue. That will definitely stand out. Yeah, so I'm just kind of adding a bit of blue to some of the pattern, and then leaving some of it just pink. Okay, and our selection is still active actually. That wasn't really on purpose. We didn't really have to use a layer mask, but I'm just going to go ahead and do that for each of these layers just for safety's sake in case we lose the selection. You could also just make a new layer and then draw while the selection is active. I thought maybe it's easier to follow if we just use a layer mask. So now we can go back to our map patterns and select a different area and just keep going and doing the same thing. So back to the ribbon tool with automatic selection, and let's just keep on going. So up here, new layer and mask. and make sure we're on this layer and not the layer mask. And we can just go ahead and turn that off if we want to. And the layer mask is still available to us. We've got a flower, so maybe something geometric might be nice next to that. It might be a nice contrast. Maybe let's go with the one called Pinched Stripe, and that is in the geometric section. And let's choose a color. Let's maybe go with purple, maybe like 4%. Yeah, that's fun. I'm using a fair amount of pressure here just to get the whole pattern filled in. Maybe let's add a little bit of turquoise to a couple areas. So I'm using lighter pressure now to kind of fill this in on top, and maybe we can even do the same with like a green, just to make it a bit more interesting, a bit more colorful. I'm feeling like making that super colorful, so let's just go with another color as well, maybe a pink. I think that something I'm trying to do here is that I'm trying to make the first color I choose a slightly darker color and then put lighter colors on top of that. So back to the matte patterns, and let's just go with this one, new layer and mask. Make sure we're in the right layer. Let's go with Dotty Geo Grid. Let's just go with this bright orange here. Make that fairly small. And I'm using heavy pressure to fill the pattern in completely in this stripe. And that definitely needs more colors. So without changing anything, size or whatever, let's just choose another color. Let's go with green, see how that turns out. I'm just adding this with light pressure in a few areas. And let's also go with a lighter yellow orange kind of color. And I feel like this needs some blue, so let's get one of these royal blue colors here. And with a very light touch, add some dots here. I'm really enjoying that contrast. So I'm just kind of adding these blue dots pretty much over the whole thing. And now that I'm done with that, I just want to zoom in and have a look at it. Okay, these colors are very much making me happy. Let's go back to the map lines. So let's go here, and instead of a pattern, let's give it a stripe of solid. Let's go with this teal. So now, instead of filling that with a pattern, we're going to make a new layer, and we can just tap the layer because we've still got our selection active. We could do a mask, but we can also just tap and fill layer. And what we've got now is this nice stripe. That is very colorful, and I think we need to offset it with another one. Let's go back to our map patterns and use the select tool and select this stripe. This is kind of like the outside of this blob, so let's give it kind of a darkish color. And so let's go up here, add a new layer, and choose a color. Shall we see how it looks with purple? That's a bit too dark. Let's choose the lighter purple. That's kind of enclosing this as like one area. And you know what I actually did not do? I think that this is part of this. So actually, let's go back to the map patterns and select this one. It was the same as this one, but instead of like adding on to that, let's just make a new one and mask that. And then let's go back to the pinched stripe, which was here. And we've still got that purple color. I'm pretty sure that's the same color we used there. So we can just keep adding that in here, just like before. And then we can go back to some of these other colors that we had been using. Okay, now that matches this, and that looks more similar. And we could probably say the same of this area down here, to be honest. So let's just do that as well. Okay, that didn't really do much, but now at least we know that it's matching this. So what are we going to do in the middle here? Let's first go back to the map patterns and select this one. Let's just make our new layer. and mask that off. Let's go with this one actually, the very first brush in the set. Let's just go with this nice blue here. And we can just turn off our selection. Oop, that's very large. There we go. So using a lot of pressure, we'll just fill the whole thing in. And then we can add a little bit of orange with a light pressure. And maybe also some green. And something we could do if we want to, we can go back to that layer mask, tap it and tap select, and then we could actually make another one below and mask that one off. And if we want to just fill a different color underneath and see how that looks, we could do that. So let's just pick a pink and see how that looks. Ooh, that's interesting. So again, what I just did, I know that I went a bit fast there. So you can go to any layer mask and then tap on the mask layer and tap select. And that means that that same selection is active again. And that's why it's good to use a layer mask, because you can still go and grab that selection if you want to do something else with it. So then what I did is I made a new layer below that. And then we can either use a mask or we can just pick a color and then fill that layer like that. And I don't actually like that, so I'm not gonna keep that. But anyway, that was just kind of quickly to show you what I did there. Let's go back to our map patterns and let's select this one in here. Let's just make a new layer and mask that off. Let's go with flower patch. Let's go with like a blue to start with and keep that kind of small. And let's just fill that in and see how we like that. And that's the heavy pressure. Let's maybe choose some light colors to go on top of that. Keep things interesting. I wanted something that had plenty of white in it to kind of offset these, and I think that's looking okay. And so now we've got these little blobs in the middle. I'm just gonna leave those blank for now and maybe come back to that. But we have these other areas. So let's have a think about what we want in these areas. And let's go back to our map patterns and select maybe this outermost one here. And because this one is enclosed in a color, let's do the same thing over here. So let's just make a new layer and mask that. Let's go with this nice mid pink and we'll just fill that. And that's a really nice, I like the pink and the yellow together. And just a note, actually, some of these are getting kind of unwieldy. Like this is a lot of layers at this point. And I know that some of you will have different iPads that don't have as many layers available. And what you can always do with the layer masks, if you're definitely done, what you can just do is tap on the layer under the mask like that and merge mask. And now we don't have that mask anymore. So I'm actually going to go ahead and clean up a few of these, and I might keep some of them open just in case I want to put some backgrounds on, but I'll just go ahead and merge some of these. Okay, it's still a bit of a mess, but I cleaned up just a little bit. And let's go back to the map patterns and select another one of these here. Let's go with that. New layer, mask. Let's maybe go with encircled star. Let's go with orange. I'm doing most of these patterns at about 5%. And I'm just gonna do this one with full pressure to start with. Lighter orange. And add that on top of some of this. An even lighter yellow. And use very light pressure just to add a tiny bit of yellow to the top of some of these. So I'm just like barely touching the screen with the pencil to do this. Choose another layer, new layer and mask. Let's go with line boxes. And that one is just pleasingly geometric next to the circles and stars. And maybe let's just add something else like a light green on top of that, ever so slightly in some areas like this. And the effect is just kind of like some of the dots. Going back to our map patterns. We'll select that area, add a new layer and mask. I want to go with this really pale green and the brush called Fashionista, and that one is in the ornamental section. And we're just going to add this one in here. And that's heavy pressure. Let's just go with the pink to add a bit more to some of this. And maybe this is one that can just be a solid line as well. Let's try that one in this kind of light orange and see how that looks. Looks a little bit like a fried egg, but we're gonna go with it. Let's just leave that middle bit white for now as well, because I'm not completely sure what I want to do with the middle bits. So back to our map patterns and select this one. And just like the others, let's make this a solid color as well. We've got teal and purple, pink, and that one was orange. So let's go with blue. Make a new layer and just fill the layer while the selection is active. And then we've got our blue. Actually, we've forgot this little bit. So let's go back to the map patterns and select that. Then we can just go to this same layer and then fill, and there we go. Make a new layer, mask that. Let's go with garden grid. We have kind of a spring and Easter vibe here. I wasn't even planning that, but it's a bit sunshiny in the UK today, and so I'm kind of thinking about flowers and sunshine and Easter, so we'll go with it. And I think I'm done with that. So let's go back to the map patterns and select new layer and mask. Let's just go with the GeoGrid. Maybe go with purple. Maybe choose one more color to go with that. So back to the map patterns, and again we select new layer and mask. Let's go with illumination. Let's go with green. So I'm using a lot of pressure. This is one of our more complex patterns, so I thought it was good in a larger area. And we can add more. Let's just start with a darker green here on some of this. Slightly different green, some areas. Then maybe we can choose a yellow on top, and that has a bit more contrast to it. We could always do a bit of orange as well. Going back to the map patterns and selecting this one, new layer and mask. I wanted to add the pattern called ice cream sandwich. My daughter actually made the comment that it looks like an ice cream sandwich, and I really liked that name, and so that's why I kind of ended up keeping this in here. We could also do a little bit of pink on there. Maybe a bit of orange as well. I think this one and this one are the same. So let's let that be our selection. Let's go with Shapely. Let's see. That's kind of fun in there. And maybe we can just add a bit of a different shade of purple on top. And going back to our map patterns. Selecting this one and new layer mask. Maybe let's keep that color because we haven't really used that color anywhere else. Let's go with floral lace. So this one kind of turns into a grid with extra pressure. So that was full pressure. And let's just give it a bit of light pink in a less pressure. Maybe we can just add a tiny bit of orange in there as well. Or maybe a tiny bit of blue. So now we have one more area over here that's not in the middle. So let's just do that. Let's go with Elizabeth and let's just keep that blue. And put some darker blue on top of that. And a bit of light pink. Something that is kind of annoying me here is that this is just a bit dark. So I'm going to go back to that purple layer and I'm just going, instead of changing the color, I'm just going to make the opacity a bit less so that the white is shining a bit more through and it's more of a pastel purple. So now all that remains are the middle pieces of all of these different little blobs. So let's go back to select on our matte patterns layer. And let's go with this one. So I thought if we go with this orange here, make a new layer and just fill that. Maybe if we go here, select that one, and let's just go back to that same layer and fill on that one as well. Let's select this one. I think that's going to look a bit stark if we have this orange, but we could also do kind of a lighter version and see how that looks here. Let's maybe go with pink on this one. I'm just kind of putting all these in the same layer, but you can choose different layers if you rather. You know what? I think actually I wanted a lighter pink there. This one could be pink. Let's just go with that, and maybe let's fill that with kind of a blue. Let's try this one, see what happens. And let's fill this one. So we could actually go with kind of a dark pink here. I'm just wondering actually if some of these are a bit too dark still. So if we go back to this layer where we've put all of these little guys in here, we can actually change the opacity on that a bit as well, so that it's a bit more pastel. So to be honest, these layers are a bit of a mess, but I just went ahead and merged all of the masks now that I'm done with the editing. And I think I'm just gonna let this be as it is. I like how I kind of used color to give some different focus areas and kept it bright and colorful and sunny and springtimey. So that's it. I have to be honest with you, that got a little bit weird, but I had fun and I hope that you did too. The pattern reveal brush set is linked below if you want to follow along with the exact brushes that I'm using. And you can also do a different variation where you just take inspiration from what I'm doing and doodle your own patterns, which is more like a traditional Zentangle. Either way, thank you so much for watching. I'd love to see what you came up with, and I'll see you next time.